And next up, we have Blessed Time, a LitRPG adventure written by Karell. It is 412 pages, $4.99. It's available on Kindle Unlimited, and here's the author's description. Some disasters can only be avoided if you know they're coming. On Karell, you're either being blessed by the gods, granted a unique power and the ability to gain experience and levels, or you are forgotten. Micah Silver was a boy picked for greatness, chosen by the gods to bear a mythic power. He longed to take his place amongst the heroes and legends he grew up reading about. Unfortunately, his primary blessing only allows him to travel into the past by sacrificing his class, wealth, and levels, a psychological burden that Micah is reluctant to shoulder. But if Micah is unwilling, fate has a way of forcing you to face your destiny, and running away can cost you everything over and over again. So there you go. This is another novel description to talk about. This is a time loop LitRPG series with a reluctant hero, catastrophes that are impossible to overcome. So talking about those aspects isn't going to spoil, I think, for anybody. This is definitely a slow burn story with the premise of the main character having the ability to travel back in time exactly 5 years doesn't actually come into play until you're like a quarter way through the story, until like 25% into it. And then the story, up until then, rather, it's a pretty slice of life story. So the first 25% doesn't feature the main premise at all. It doesn't feature time travel. It really is just the main character going through his first, we'll call it iteration of his timeline, just making mistakes, making friends, having a little love and fun here and there. And then, of course, tragedy strikes. Something big happens that forces him to use his unique time travel power, and he ends up back 5 years into the past with all his foreknowledge of the things that are to come. And that's really what the story is. It is him going through these iterations of time travel of his life, rather, trying to fix things, trying to stop this catastrophe from happening, and the unintended consequences of just even sometimes the smallest changes to what he does. And in each iteration, he's very much training. He's very much doing magical theorizing. He's very much growing more and more powerful as it goes on. And I really liked that aspect of it, that there are very reasonable consequences to his deviations of events. And sometimes they did very well, sometimes they did not. But they were always not what the main character planned or expected to have happen to him. And I really did enjoy like that concept, but I also appreciated the training stuff. I'm a big fan of like a main character working super hard for his power structure and for his power gains, and that definitely shows up in the story here. The end of it probably was stretched out a little bit too much for me. I feel like, the last 15% could have been cut off, and it would have been a perfectly good story, because by that time, the big event, the big catastrophe issue was resolved, and so the last 15% felt a little bit stretched. And I'm going to tell you, it's not without purpose. It really does lead into like, we're going to bring you a book number 2 in a couple of weeks or in October. And so we need something to connect them. We need something to like continue on the story. And I absolutely get that. But it really did kind of stretch out a little too far from it. It was like, I would have been super satisfied with like the ending about a little bit earlier. It would have felt a little more, nice and neat, a little more better pace for me. But still, entertaining story overall. I liked the way the time travel was worked in the story. It wasn't a catch-all for fixing everything that was wrong, and there were again very reasonable consequences to the changes that the main character made that were unexpected. So I did like that regional logical progression of somebody trying to change the past, just creating these different futures that nobody expected sometimes. So again, it scores 7.6 out of 10 for Blessed Time, a LitRPG adventure. Again, that's a 7.6 score for Blessed Time. Had a good time with it.